Alp, seni bırakmadan yabancı konuğumuzla beraber devam edeceğiz. Yurt dışından, Voodoo'dan Keith Nielsen bizlerle beraber olacak. Tam da konuştuklarımızın üzerine Digital Out of Home'daki kreatif kullanımlarla ilgili bir panel kendisiyle gerçekleştireceksin. Keith, moderasyonu soruyorum şimdi. Hazırsa alabiliriz ekrana kendisini. Bu arada araştırma hakikaten çok güzel verilerle çok iyi bir araştırmaydı. Ellerinize sağlık.
Teşekkür ederiz. Teşekkür ederiz.
Keith, hi. Can you turn? Yeah, can you turn?
There we go. There we go. Automatically muted, as it should be. Morning, everyone. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. And
my pleasure.
The screen is yours, and I've.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Hi, Keith. Good morning.
Morning, Alp. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Good. Thanks for inviting me to this. I've been listening so far. Unfortunately, don't understand an awful lot. But it's been nice to see former colleagues represented. Mr. Sadat, obviously, I worked with in the past. Nice to see his face.
Excellent. Yes, so we've now come to the topic of Kreatif. I've shared the results of our survey with you as well. And but before that, perhaps you'd just like to tell us there's a very young crowd in Istanbul and Turkey in general, who you are and what's your background.
So this is where you realize just how old I am now. So obviously my name is Keith Nielsen. I founded a company called Voodoo. My background, I deployed my first screen network back in the year 2000 for a large retailer. Help, let me know when you need me to stop and translate here.
Okay. Feel free, go ahead.
And I've been involved in pure out-of-home since 2006. Since 2006, I've worked in domestic and international roles for some of the world's best and largest media owners. And in doing so, pioneered a dynamic in the UK with Ogilvy, with a campaign for Castrol, which was reading number plates back in 2007. And I've been pushing for dynamic intelligence and the standard adoption thereof ever since. The foundations of Voodoo, frustration, I would say. In 2015, out of home had already been 7 years old or so. And I did a survey of the business units and the amount of dynamic intelligence or any intelligence that was being deployed in out-of-home campaigns. And a startling figure of 0.7% of those campaigns had any intelligence, including simple things like day parts. And in 2016, the contradictions between the day-to-day reality of that and the freedom that I had to deploy 16 campaigns in Cannes for the Cannes Lions highlighted that there was a gap. And so within a few weeks of leaving Cannes that particular year, I had left my solid employment, my guaranteed employment. I had sold my house and I had set up Voodoo specifically to try and address that problem.
Excellent. Keith, dijital açık havanın veteranlarından diyebileceğimiz birisi. 2000 senesinde ilk dijital signage network'ünü bir mağaza zinciri için hazırladı. 2006'dan beri sadece açık hava alanında aktif kendisi. Dünyanın sayılı outdoor mecralarında ulusal ve uluslararası sorumluluklara sahip farklı rollerde yer aldı. Dinamik konusunda Ogilvy ile 2007'de Castrol için bir kampanyada bu alana iyice girmiş oldu. Dinamik konusunda o günden bugüne dinamik kreatif alanını destekliyor ve Voodoo adında kendisine sahip olduğu bir firma var. Bu firmanın kuruluşuna giden yolda 2016'da Cannes Lions Festivali'nde 16 tane dinamik kreatif kampanyayı orada Cannes'da dijital bir ekranda aynı anda hayata geçirdiler. Birkaç hafta sonra evini satıp Voodoo'yu kuruyor. So, Keith, the next question is is about the adoption of dynamic creative. What are your thoughts there? You just mentioned that survey where it was 0.6%, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
How do you see things now today in 2022?
It's improved a little, but I wouldn't say that it's a significant improvement. I would, at a guess, I've not done a proper survey for some years, but from our global experience and from talking to our various clients, I would still say that we are, as an industry, using dynamic capabilities, intelligent capabilities, purely in creative, no more than 5%, 6% of all campaigns.
Ya. Ve evet, dinamik kreatifin kullanımıyla ilgili bir sorum oldu Keith'e. Yeterince kullanılmadığını söylüyor. %5, %6 civarında olduğunu tahmin ediyor. Uzun bir süredir herhangi bir araştırması olmamasına rağmen bu konuyla ilgili. Keith, what about the reasons behind it? So, I mean, we've talked about this before, where we think this the discussion around whether or not a dynamic creative should be deployed in a campaign happens actually too late in the process.
Absolutely.
Tell us a bit more about that. What are your experiences?
I think from my experience, the out-of-home consideration within any wider campaign is brought into the conversation too late creatively. And by that, I mean that there's usually other assets that exist, and those other assets exist either in television or print. And those assets then have to be retrofitted into an out-of-home campaign. And that's reason number one.
Hı-hı. Evet, birkaç nedeni var. Kreatif sürecinde, kampanyanın tasarım sürecinde dinamik kreatif konusu çok geç ele alınıyor. Ve diğer mecralardaki kreatif belirlendikten sonra geriye dönük bir şekilde bu açık havaya uyduruluyor diyebiliriz. Keith'in görüşü bu şekilde. And what about the publishers, maybe the production side? What are the capabilities there? Is there some work there that still needs to be done for a higher adoption?
Yeah, so I would say some of the other issues, some of the other challenges that we need to overcome. Historically, certainly, a lot of dynamic out-of-home has historically been too complex and too expensive, and therefore has been the domain of big budget clients.
Markaların karmaşıklığı çok fazla büyütmeleri diyebiliriz ve tabii ki teknik anlamdaki kapasite yetersizliği de bu alanda engellerden bir tanesi oldu. But really, it's not actually that complex. There is a short route to success. There are companies like ours, I suppose, and also other advanced media owners which are able to offer this type of service as well. Where would you say that how should brands and advertisers begin?
Well, I think the easy answer to that, right? So I think we need to understand one more of the reasons behind the scenes why these are not straightforward. Historically, there's been the out-of-home media owner landscape has been hugely diverse. We've had varied language. What are different formats? What are they called? There's inconsistent aspect ratios. There's a huge variety of operating systems, CMSs. And what's been really interesting is the role that IAB has actually taken in this. IAB are pushing for more common standards, and I think that's one of the most important elements that will help our industry going forward with adoption of even things like programmatic, dynamic, etc.
Tabii ki dijital açık havada bir standartizasyon sorunu var doğası gereği. Çok farklı ebatlar, ekran ebat oranları ve farklı sistemlerin kullanılması tabii ki işimizi zorlaştırıyor ama standartizasyon konusunda IAB'nin güzel çabaları bulunuyor diyor arkadaşımız Keith. So okay, let's go on to the sort of the third question we had noted. What should an advertiser be doing in order to make their digital out of home more creative and contextually relevant?
Use data. Use the simple data that exists around you. Every campaign placement is placed on a location because of the audience of that location, the location itself, the environment that it's in. And even those three data points are not used as often enough as they could be.
Veriyi kullanın sorunun cevabı. Sorumuz bir marka dijital açık hava kreatifini daha ortama duyarlı ve contextual bir şekilde daha yaratıcı nasıl yapabilir sorusuydu. Veri kullanın, ekranın lokasyonunu kullanın, farklı değişkenleri kullanın sorunun cevabı. So instead of retrofitting from TV and posters,
think about it earlier. Absolutely.
Yeah, think about it earlier.
So I would say the key components are, think about out of home far earlier in the process. Consider what data that you have, and then don't assume that it's straightforward. It's not difficult. Out of home production is not difficult, but it's not straightforward because there are robust, secure network mechanisms that need to be navigated from a security point of view.
Indeed. Okay, so what about from the workflow perspective? So we talked about the agencies, the different sort of agencies and the different departments being involved in the process a bit late, or starting to consider, oh, yeah, we could also do this, but oh, it's too late now. That type of discussion.
Exactly.
That's also an important factor, isn't it? To
Yes.
Just instead of the technology, but to actually have the discussion earlier on. So what can agencies, do you think, or brands do to actually mitigate against that?
Well, I think as you said, start the process earlier. Get closer to the media owners. The media owners' tech teams are going to be your partners in deploying, delivering, executing these campaigns successfully. But also, don't get lost by shiny things, right? One of your slides stated that 81% of users said that an animated ad containing real-time data was more engaging than one that doesn't, right? And that's a really interesting statistic because certainly in the UK, what I hear a lot of, and not just in the UK, is that weather's boring. We've done weather, right? And that may be true, but how many times in your market in Turkey have clients deployed weather campaigns in the last 12 months? So the point is that as an industry, certainly clients are somewhat guilty of chasing shiny innovations as opposed to taking advantage of the basic intelligence that's sitting there waiting to be exploited.
I mean, why not? Yeah, exactly. Why not actually own that space and be the brand that is associated with real-time weather information, especially if you're selling a product that's directly related to, the conditions around you. Keith'in cevabı şu şekilde. Sorumuz şuydu: markaların bu süreçte neler yapabileceğiyle ilgili ve hedefleme anlamında daha ilgili kreatifler oluşturma konusunda neler yapacağıyla ilgiliydi. Şimdi şöyle bir problem görüyoruz ki uluslararası anlamda karşılaşılıyor. Bu da ajansların, markaların sürekli olarak yeni bir şeyi ilk defa yapma isteği ve çabası. Örneğin hava durumu ile ilgili bir şey daha önce yapıldıysa onun tekrar bulaşmamak, ama İkimiz de şu konuda anlaşıyoruz. Belli markalar, özellikle o şartlarla ilgili bir ürünü olan markaların bu alanları sahiplenmeleri yönünde görüşlerimiz var. But of course, it's not just about weather. There's so many different things. I mean,
Exactly.
I mean, there's that fantastic campaign from probably about 10 years ago now, the British Airways campaign, and there's many other ones. Spotify is a very good one for using data towards the end of the year. There are so many different creative ways to actually make use of data. So if they do want a shiny, a new shiny object, there is definitely one out there for them. But it's not just about
100%. Yeah, 100%. But the point is, you know, successful dynamic is a slow, steady development of confidence building, right? So although it's not particularly glamorous to do a weather campaign or a location call out, what you are doing by repeating those kinds of campaigns is, number one, using solid data sets that exist. But number two, and as important, what you are doing is building experience within the client, within the creative agencies, and within the media owners, to build the confidence that data does work, and that data is not, data campaigns are not, they don't need to be scary. They don't need to be complex. You know, the more we do them, the easier these things become, so that when we are chasing the next shiny campaign star, if it's involving intelligence, it's not difficult.
Evet, kullanılabilecek veri sadece hava şartlarıyla ilgili değil, çok daha farklı veri kaynakları da kullanılabilir ve gerçekten aslında hızlı bir şekilde dinamik kreatif hayata geçirilebilir diyor Keith. Final question on the developments in digital out of home, especially around these forced perspective creatives that provide the illusion of 3D, which have been going around quite a bit social media. What are your opinions on that recent development?
I think it's interesting. It's not a new art form. It's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But what is exciting to see is that it's been deployed into out of home with great success. And if anything, what it does prove is two things. Number one, the power of great out of home creative. And number two, the power of social amplification when you get your out of home campaign right.
Evet, üç boyut izlenimini sağlayan kreatiflerle ilgili soru sordum kendisine ve aslında yüzlerce senedir uygulanan bir konsept farklı kanallarda. Dijital açık havada şu anda değerlendiriliyor olması güzel. Kreatifin etkisini biraz gösteriyor, sosyal medyanın etkisini biraz daha fazla gösteriyor. İyi bir kreatifin aslında hani açık havada iyi bir kreatifin sosyal medyada da paylaşılabileceğini söylüyor. What about scaling of this type of creative? I mean, it's obviously seems to be quite popular. It might sort of fizzle out in terms of with the novelty value, but the scaling of this, it doesn't necessarily have to be on two-sided or cornered screens, does it?
No. So there's been some confusion around what is required to run 3D. There's been some manufacturers that have said that it needs special LED screens, there's special players, etc. The truth is that the 3D effect can be achieved on any screen, including small format, face-on, corners, curved, completely scalable. It's just a distorted content style. That's all it is.
Evet, üç boyutlu kreatif konusunda biraz daha devam ettik sohbete ve aslında çok farklı ekranlarda gerçekleştirilebileceğini söylüyor ki sadece köşeli, kenarlı ekranlarda değil, daha tek kenarlı veya işte daha farklı şekillerde olan ekranlarda da yapılabilir. Bu biraz Anıl'ın sorusuna da cevap olmuş oluyor. Yani cevap evet, çok farklı lokasyonlarda Türkiye'de dahil olmak üzere bu tarz uygulamalar yapılabilir. Just to finish off, back to sort of the general topic of creative, dynamic creative, and other ways of making our campaigns more impactful. what would your takeaways be for any brand to take away from this conversation we're having?
Well, yeah. So as I said earlier, every campaign, every out-of-home campaign is planned, around three immovable criteria. One is time. When is my campaign going live? One is location. Where is it going live? And environment. In which area is it going live? And with those three data points plus client data points, you can multi-layer data to create almost infinite amounts of dynamic intelligence for any single campaign.
Evet, bir defa markaların dinamik kreatif konusunda düşünebilecekleri ve belki de bu panelden, bu sohbetimizden elde edecekleri en temel çıkarımlar şu olur. Bir defa kampanyam ne zaman yayında olacak? Bununla ilgili bir bu değişken acaba Kreatif'te kullanılabilir mi? Kampanyanın, ekranların konumu, ortamı ve aynı zamanda bana sahip, yani markaya sahip birinci parti verimiz nedir sorularına cevap arıyor olması iyi olur markaların. Any interesting campaigns recently that perhaps you'd just like to tell us about that you've seen in one of the markets?
The most interesting campaigns currently that you're seeing are almost certainly 3D. I think recently there was the first 3D campaign that contained a dynamic element within it. That's going to get interesting. But we've spoken about this at length, Alp. You know my thoughts on this. My thoughts are, keep things simple, repeat, do things again, repeat, go through the learning process, gain experience, build confidence, understand the value of data within dynamic campaigns, and keep doing them more often.
Evet, son dönemlerde acaba kendisi ilginç bir kampanyaya şahit oldu mu sorusuna çoğunlukla evet son dönemde daha çok 3 boyutlu kampanyalar, 3 boyutlu kreatifi taşıyan kampanyalar ön plana çıkıyor. Yakın geçmişte hem dinamik bir veri içeren, değişken veri içeren bir kampanyanın 3 boyutluyla birleştirildiği bazı örnekleri gördük. O markalara tavsiyem şu olur. Keep it simple, yani sade bir şekilde kampanyalarınızı kurgulamaya, dinamik bir şekilde kurgulamaya çalışın. Tekrarlayın ve bu alanda özgüven kazanmaya başlayın. Keith, thank you very much for your time, for agreeing to participate. I think
my pleasure.
It was a great panel, it was a great conversation, and long may it continue.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Keith.
Bye.
It was wonderful to see you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.